Welcome to the Knicks Film School Postgame Show presented by BetUS. DJ Zullo here, coming to you right after a tough one. Knicks fall to the LA Lakers 128 to 112. Knicks 5-game lose streak ends. Knicks are now 32-17. LeBron James goes for 33, 12, and 11. The Knicks 2 stars, as we will get into and try to analyze and figure out and dissect, both of their stars struggled mightily against a really impressive Laker defense. I think that's where we have to start. And listen, the defense is going to be front and center here. It was a massive problem. But to me, I'm looking at this offense that has been elite this season, this offense that is going to go down likely in the regular season, at least, as the greatest offense in history of the New York Knicks. Truly an elite offense by any measure. They continue to have massive, not big problems, massive problems against a small set of teams that are rangy, that are physical, that switch, that can take the Knicks out of their offense. We've seen it with Oklahoma City. We've seen it with Boston. And we saw it tonight against the Los Angeles Lakers team playing without Anthony Davis. But what that gave them this opportunity with DFS coming off the bench and Hachimura and Vanderbilt to get into passing lanes, to show bodies at the Knicks stars and eliminate the Knicks pick and roll option from the table. The Brunson Cat pick and roll, while not as lethal as it was in November, is still as dynamic a two-man action as there is in the NBA. And the Lakers effectively told the Knicks, you're not using that action today. You're going somewhere else. And that somewhere else just wasn't good enough. And again, the defense is its own. I could do two monologues, one on the offense, one on the defense, because there's problems on both sides. But I'm looking big picture here. This is just one game. But this game does represent something that the Knicks are going to have to figure out. This game represented an issue the Knicks have that they don't, not that they don't have a good answer for. They don't have a decent answer for. They have no answer for it right now. When teams can put a physical, strong wing on Karl Anthony Towns, and when they can show bodies of Jalen Brunson, the Knicks have problems. And if they're going to view themselves as an offense that can win a championship, that is the answer they have to figure out. And at this point of the season, basically halfway through, that is an open question. And it's a worrisome position to be in as a fan of this team. And I'm sure as a coaching staff that is looking to build towards title contender. So that is, to me, an alarming aspect to where this team is right now. Now, there was other factors here. Losing OG Anunoby, playing only 16 minutes to what the Knicks PR is right now, at least, calling a foot sprain. Though I think a lot of us have a little bit of skepticism around that because we all saw him reach down to his lower calf area. We all saw it. But anyway, to give the Knicks the benefit of the doubt, he leaves with a foot sprain. The Knicks lost a critical spacer from the game. OG Anunoby in those 16 minutes, +1. It wasn't just his defense on LeBron James. It was the fact that he is a reliable floor spacer, and that necessitated more minutes for Josh Hart and Precious Achiuwa together. And as well as those two played individually at times against this particular defense, as rangy and as physical and as good as they were, that was not going to get it done. So losing OG Anunoby is a major theme of this game. But we're now, as I said, halfway through the season, basically, and the Knicks have not figured out a way to counter this attack. Karl Anthony Towns had a few occasions where he got pretty deep post position, missed a couple of jump hooks, but just generally does not look comfortable as a post player against wings. And the Lakers, to their credit, brought their doubles, and Richard Jefferson pointed out on the broadcast, and it was a good point. They were doubling from the bottom. They were showing bodies, and losing Anunoby even made this a compound of the problem. But the amount of options out of the cat double teams were just non-existent. Through the third quarter, the Knicks were 2 of 8 shooting the ball out of cat double teams. So Lakers were putting 2 to the ball pretty consistently when Cat had it in the post. But we were not getting decent offense, let alone elite offense, out of that action. So the Lakers were more than willing to show bodies at Karl-Anthony Towns and show bodies at Jalen Brunson. And that's the next area of concern, is when you have Brunson. And this is something that the Heat showed last year, and that certain teams, when they can get to Jalen Brunson, this is how you do it, is that you load up help early. You make the other Knicks, you play off Josh Hart, you play off Precious Achiuwa, you show bodies and gaps, and you load up. And when Jalen Brunson isn't able to walk into threes off a pick and roll action, when the Knicks transition attack is on generating open looks, offense can get hard for him when those shots that normally come just outside the restricted area in the painted zone are now coming from outside the paint through a forest of limbs. He had it incredibly hard. And I do think there are ways the Knicks can improve in this, but I think you have to just call it like it is. Credit the Lakers, who had a wonderful defensive game plan, and then on defense, and then on offense, attacked Karl-Anthony Towns relentlessly. And let's talk about the Karl-Anthony Towns defense, because there was a point in this game where I was like, are the Knicks just better off playing Achiuwa at the 5, switching everything, because you just weren't getting much on offense from Karl-Anthony Towns, and on defense, it was from the start. Karl-Anthony Towns in drop with his hands down was a problem, and the Lakers exploited it time and time again. The Knicks, I think, as a unit, didn't handle in the first half some of those Dorian Finney-Smith's pops to the top of the key. They didn't switch it. They didn't want to switch it. It didn't really look like they had a particular game plan in mind. And Karl-Anthony Towns was picked on all night. And I fully acknowledge that this team is coming off a 5-game win streak. I fully acknowledge that they have played very good basketball of late. But this Lakers team has certain attributes that makes me think of Oklahoma City and Boston, because of the way they can put these. All of a sudden, the Lakers are just like, they have a ton of these like rangy wing type players. And when you don't have Anthony Davis, you just have to lean into this, and teams just give the Knicks problems when they could do that. The Knicks don't have a great answer for it. I would have probably gone to Precious at 114-104. I thought late in the fourth, Knicks could make one more push. Game was still technically within arm's reach, and I just didn't see enough from Karl-Anthony Towns that he was going to be able to provide enough juice to get this team close enough. There were certain Knicks that had moments. I mean, Deuce McBride shooting the basketball, especially in the first half, I thought played well. Josh Hart, just the sheer energy that he was expending in the second half. I mean, he basically becoming the primary defender on LeBron James, and seemingly not losing any of the juice, getting to those loose balls and getting the ball up the floor and making tough contested shots at times. But again, Lakers are just living with that, right? You're living with Precious Achiuwa getting to the paint and shooting a floater. You're living with Josh Hart shooting mid-range jump shots over a contest. These are shots you're going to give up. Josh Hart made his fair share. Precious Achiuwa made a couple of those. But you are not going to beat a Lakers team that was able to get pretty much what they wanted on offense. And it ended basically with Karl-Anthony Towns not being up to standard. And I thought the Knicks drop coverage was going to be a problem coming into the game. The Lakers have been inconsistent in their attacks against certain drop teams, but against Washington, I know it's Washington, so I didn't want to like make too big a deal about it. But against Valanciunas, who started that game, the Lakers destroyed him and his drop coverage. And that was a nice primer for them to play the Wizards 2 nights ago and to come into this Knicks team and have the actions in the film, knowing that these things can work against this particular coverage. And the Knicks closeouts in general just lacked urgency. Hand down, man down. I mean, that is I tweeted this, like a wise man once said that, and that matters. And so when the Knicks were closing out, hands at their waist constantly. It started with Karl-Anthony Towns, but he wasn't the only one. The Knicks could have defended the 3-point line a little better just by showing a little more effort and better technique. Listen, Lakers shot in a way that makes me want to think this is one of those shot-making luck games where the team you're playing, especially one that is not known to be an elite 3-point shooting team, just has a great shooting night. But how many of these shots were wide open? And this has been a season-long issue. While the Knicks, the trend line has been going in the right direction in terms of the total amount of threes the Knicks are allowing on a game-to-game basis, they are still giving up their fair share of wide open ones. Lakers on the night, 19 of 40 from three. 47%. How many were just wide open? And how many were the product of a coverage scheme that just was not the one to utilize? And if you want to start the game in that way, you want to start in a more conservative approach, which is going to be where Tibbs sort of the fallback is, and where I tend to side with him in terms of like having your base coverage be drop, keep the ball in front, try to limit the total amount of threes. But when Austin Reeves steps into a 3-point shot, I think the second possession of the game, it immediately raised a red flag for me. Like, okay, the Lakers they have an agenda here. And speaking of agendas, I tweeted this other thing about like how special it is LeBron playing at MSG and how we're just not going to get many more of these. And I do find myself watching him, even against my team, doing things. And I just marvel at the athleticism that's still there, the unnatural ability to just read the game. There were quiet points in the game where he was calling out sets and screens and basically quarterbacking the defense from his low man help position. Astounding stuff that he just is a one of one in terms of his ability to do these things. But when he's in the first quarter taking mid-range fadeaway elbow jumpers, the man has an agenda coming into the night. And you saw this when Kobe would have big games at MSG. And I think Kobe's like the second or ABC had the graphic. Kobe's like second or third in terms of career scoring mark at MSG in terms of points per game. LeBron's, I think, in the top 5. But Kobe would have these games where he would come out and you would just know, MJ was like this too, you would just know the agenda's clear. He's going for a big one. And at LeBron's age, a big performance is 33, 12, and 11. It's not a 50-point game. But you knew going in to this game that he was going to come out and try to make a point. And when he was taking those shots, which for the Lakers was was the only point in the game where they were sort of freelancing and not getting into the actions that they ended up utilizing quarters 2 through 4, attacking the Knicks and drop. It was a lot of freelance ISO, just LeBron going to work stuff. But it was clear what he was trying to do. And once he made those shots in that early part of the game, a couple times, Shamet got switched on to him. It was like, all right, I see where this is going. And I think that might have spooked Tibbs a little bit in terms of like his ability to then switch actions. And then once you lose Anunoby, then you're at the mercy of either playing big and just not having the requisite spacing required to put up a fight as an offense, or go small and just not being able to utilize that switch option against some of these actions, which limits how you're going to go. I mean, you can't understate how much the Anunoby injury in this particular game. We don't know what this means, long term. Is this a day-to-day thing? Is this a several week thing? Mark, if you end up getting any news like on X or posted about this from either from the Knicks or the Knicks beat, maybe from Tibbs postgame about the injury or anything they know about it. Okay, so Mark just posted here. Tom Thibodeau said OG Anunoby's x-rays were negative on the right foot sprain. He said he doesn't know if Anunoby will get an MRI. Yeah. All right. So not saying a whole lot. And if this is a soft tissue type thing, maybe an x-ray was likely to be negative here, but the MRI is going to be telling, or they were worried about like maybe a fracture in the foot. That is clearly not the case. So a clean x-ray, good news. Doesn't know if he's going to get the MRI, but I think we can sort of at least breathe a sigh of relief that the worst case scenario and the scenario we were all thinking when he immediately grabbed the lower part of his leg, that the worst case scenario is off the table. But we don't know exactly, of course, like how long this injury is going to keep him out. I've talked about how this Knicks starting lineup has been fortunate to have as much good luck with the health situation as any team in the NBA. Maybe more than any team in the NBA. I mean, it's not just the amount of minutes in terms of how many times the starting lineup has got to play together. It's the fact that they have been healthy. So we're clearly going to lose. I think it's pretty clear, at least from my perspective, that Anunoby is going to miss some time here. Hopefully it's a short duration. But it does beg the question, like how this team handles that, because there is going to be a size, athleticism concern here. And you saw that in this game. Shamet, McBride, Payne, who saw 5 minutes of action, took some ill-advised threes, didn't see the floor again. Knicks are small without Anunoby, legitimately. So, listen, we're a couple of weeks before the trade deadline. I think they would be prudent to try to shore up this wing room here, even if it's someone that you're not going to necessarily acquire to play minutes in the playoffs, just someone that can give you minutes in a regular season game against a team like the Lakers when size is of the essence. And I think that was where the game sort of like became just too hard, because once you lose Anunoby, again, you lose the primary defender on LeBron. You lose a critical floor spacer. You lose your best transition finisher. He's so important to what this team does on both ends. And he was, of course, playing as well offensively as he has all year. Defense has been ticking up. So it's a shame that he went out in this game. And it really brought to bear some real concerns about the depth of this team in terms of the guy that you could rely on to defend threes and fours. Knicks, Shamet fights and Deuce will fight, but there's a limitation, size, strength, and the whole thing that the Knicks are going to have to figure out. But losing Anunoby in this game, because when Towns had those doubles, I mean, there were times where I almost saw his brain work, where he has the ball and it's in his right hand. He's trying to find an option. The person guarding Achua is pulled in to the opposite block. Achua's in the far weak side corner. The pass is likely can be made based on Cat's size and his ability to make that. But he knows if he makes that cross-court pass to Achua in the corner, That's not generating a good look for his team. So it caused indecision. And because the paint was so constricted, there were so many bodies there, cutting off the Towns post-ups was basically like you're cutting into just humanity, a sea of humanity in the paint, because the Knicks just didn't have enough shooting on the floor. And because the Lakers did a really good job of where they were sending the help. It wasn't being sent from the top. You can, and the Knicks have done this, plenty of teams will send help from the top. From whatever the entry pass was, double from that spot. That's an easy kick out. Maybe you get a swing for an open three, but when you double from the bottom, you're effectively forcing the big baseline. That makes it tougher. If you can execute that sort of defensive coverage against a post-up player you're worried about, to me, that was a fantastic decision by Redick coming into the game, executed to perfection, but also allowed to be so effective based on the personnel the Knicks had on the floor. And you can easily tell me the Knicks should have gone to an all-offense unit and just, size be damned, defense be damned. Let's get as much shooting on the floor as possible because we have to figure out a way to make Cat's life just a little bit easier. But I think that was a damned if you do, damned if you don't proposition. This was a tough one. This was a tough one that could have been catastrophic in terms of the OG Anunoby injury. I think we all should just exhale a little bit and just be thankful the injury doesn't look to be that serious in terms of putting his season in jeopardy. And as I mentioned, Oklahoma City, Boston, maybe this Lakers team, there are a tiny group of NBA teams that could do this to this New York Knicks offense. Now the question is, will you have to go through Oklahoma City? Will you have to go through Boston to get to Oklahoma City? And if you get past Boston, can you do this against Oklahoma City? That's where this question I think is legitimate. But if you take a step back, 32-17, this is a really good basketball team. They're going to have to figure out how to manage this potential OG Anunoby absence. But these losses happen, man. LeBron James came out and he played like a all-NBA player. He doesn't have it every night in this way. MSG, as anyone who has watched stars come into this building and had great games, we know this building does something to these guys. There's an extra gear that can happen. And every once in a while, it beats you. And that's what happened. I give credit to the Lakers. I give credit to, of course, LeBron James. But I don't want to end this without acknowledging that this is a micro problem in a season that overall has been a real positive start and shown signs that this team can get to where we all think they can get to. But it does bring together certain questions that they're going to have to figure out. And luckily, there's plenty of time to do it. The only concerning part is that I don't think there's a great answer for it. And I think that's sort of where we need to finish this as the Knicks fall to the Lakers 128-112. Triple-double LeBron James, triple-double Josh Hart, but it wasn't enough. Just credit to Josh Hart, man. Just the effort, a sheer marvel. Went toe-to-toe with LeBron there for a couple of moments, but not enough in the end. All right. Well, before we get to the super chats, quick break to tell you about Rocket Money. The start of the new year is the perfect time to get organized, set goals, and prioritize what matters most. And for me, a top priority is my financial wellness, which feels more important than ever. Thanks to Rocket Money, my goals feel achievable. They show me all my subscriptions right in one place and help me easily cancel ones that I forgot I've been paying for. This has been huge for me of late. Tax season, I've been putting everything And together, there's been multiple subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was paying for. But thanks to Rocket Money, I am paying for them no longer. Rocket Money pulls all of them together, all my spending across all my different accounts, so I can clearly track my spending habits and see where I can cut back. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of 500 million in canceled subs, saving members up to $740 a year when using all the app's premium features. So cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/game on today. That's rocketmoney.com/game on. rocketmoney.com/game on. It's a good service. Check it out. It's been helpful for a bunch of us over at KFS. Get rid of the stuff that you didn't know you were paying for. Just stealing from your account every month. All right. Super chats. I don't know. I think it's going to be a rough vibes here, but hopefully there's some level headedness sort of sprinkled in. But Mark, let's get to the first one. This one came in during the game and just not sure when this was, but it's from John Leary. Thank you, John, for kicking us off. Hot take: would have had Deuce in for Precious those last 6 minutes. Same out of the norm shot selection for Cat early on. Sloppy, but only down 5. Yeah, I mean, that goes to the point I made just a few moments ago of like, you could have gone, and I think it's a fair critique, is that you could have gone just all shooting here and tried to open the floor up as much as possible. I think, the rebounding, of course, Tibbs is going to lean on that potentially a little too heavily in terms of cleaning up defensive back rebounds. But I think that is a real concern here. But listen, they ended up giving up 128 points. So you can argue that they could have gone to a smaller, more free-flowing offense to try to open the floor up. I think that's a fair concern. In terms of the shot selection from Cat early on, I think it was just the thing about him is, as well as he's played this year, it's when teams can really load up help against him, whether it's a post up or get into his driving gaps. The reads off those just aren't always the cleanest. So he had a couple offensive fouls. The passing out of those doubles again weren't great. I do want to give him the benefit of the doubt, at least on those post ups, because I just don't think the options out of those were fantastic. So I think there's probably some, more he could have done in that situation. But he was also like, when you're struggling and your shot diet has been changed so dramatically, you're going to likely force things. And that is when Cat is at his worst, when he's driving into a gap help and he's forcing, post ups, contested shots. It didn't come easy to him tonight. It never did. There was maybe 1 3 he got that seemed to be, that was wide open. He ended up making it. I think it was the second half that was out of a flow of an offense. That was just a clean look. But beyond that, I mean, there just wasn't a lot of clean offense for him to attack. And that will, for him at least, potentially cause him to force things. And that's where you get the offensive fouls. That's where you get the turnovers and the poor shot attempts. It was a rough one for him. But again, I do want to harken back to the idea, like, there are the teams that can do this to him. It's a small number. And we have to also acknowledge the disappointment of what this game was, but have enough awareness to know that this is a specific problem against maybe 3 or 4 teams in this league, which doesn't mean it's not a problem, but it does not represent what this offense obviously can be, because we've seen them play elite offense against good defenses before. We just haven't seen it against defenses that can do the things the Lakers can do, the Thunder can do, and what the Celtics can do. So I think in the Rockets, who they'll see in a couple days, what they could do. That's the last sort of hurdle for this offense to get over. And I think we are left wondering, what the options are out of that. And, I don't think this team has a great answer for it right now. And that, again, that to me is where the biggest concern lies. Thank you, John, for kicking us off and hanging with us tonight. Bill Peterfriend, thank you so much. Appreciate you guys sticking with me on a late Saturday evening here on the East Coast. That was an ugly game, and I do not buy a sprain in a week. OG out at least until after the break. First of all, yes, as ugly as we've seen this team play in a long time, and I am 100% with you in terms of the skepticism regarding this OG injury. And I think there is plenty of history as Knicks fans to maybe not trust everything that's coming out of this PR staff. I think that's something we just have to call it like it is. But I don't want to also say that I don't want to clearly state that they're not being forthcoming with the injury. I think it's probably likely he has a sprained foot, but I'm leaving some room for them to not be totally forthright with this injury. I've observed this team for too long to not have that skepticism. And, I don't know how long he's going to be out. I think if you think he's going to be out until after the All-Star break, we have the elbow injury completely different, but we had the elbow injury last year that lingered and lingered and lingered. And we got reports that weren't necessarily, telling us much. And then certain things coming from the team maybe weren't as clear as they could have been. So I think there's, again, if you want to say this team is not telling the truth here, I can't tell you don't have a lot of evidence over a long period of time to make you feel that way. You do. So I don't know. Hopefully this is a relatively minor situation. They need the guy. We saw it in this game. Again, he was a +1 in a game they lost by 16. And it was both ends of the court that he was absolutely critical, and his loss was felt all across that game. Thank you so much, Bill. I appreciate it. John Leary again. Thank you, John. Hate losing to LA. LeBron always milks beating us. Yeah, I mean, listen, you could tell he wanted this one. And there was the showboating, and there was, a little extra in the tank for him. Certainly helped that a couple nights ago against the Wizards. It was a breeze of a game, blowout Lakers win. He was putting on a show in an arena where stars come in, and that's what they try to do. I have to hand it to him in some ways. I mean, he was magnificent for a lot of that game offensively. And then I thought the defensive rebounding too was, while the Knicks did a lot on the offensive glass. I'm just going to pull up where the Knicks ended up going offensive rebounding wise. They had on the night 16 offensive rebounds, 7 for Achua, 4 for Josh Hart. But I thought LeBron did enough on the defensive glass without Anthony Davis to end some possessions. So while he is not anywhere near the defensive player he once was, physically, he's able to provide enough on the defensive glass to give the Lakers a chance against a team like the Knicks that were really attacking the offensive glass. It looks like we have some Ian Begley news. He says, Jalen Brunson, this is a quote from Begley just posted this. Jalen Brunson says he knows as much as the media does regarding OG's injury, but said we're praying for him and just waiting to see what we hear. Well, I can't tell you that's making me feel amazing. Listen, I don't even know if OG was in the building when the game ended. I don't know if they saw him at halftime. Where did the injury happen? Did that Mark, that happened in the I'm blanking on when the injury occurred. Was it early second, beginning of third? Thank you. So it wouldn't have mattered at halftime. So I'm wondering if they did get a look at him, but that quote about we're praying for him and waiting to see what we hear. That does like raise my antenna a little bit. That doesn't sound great, but I also don't want to get into the position where I'm trying to read every tea leaf here. But I think we all know, and this team knows. I mean, the building knew. Mike Breen on the broadcast said it, like how him leaving just sucked the energy out of that building, which had the atmosphere of a playoff game. But as soon as he went down, it was like, we all knew, every person that's in that arena knew that this was a legitimate like crisis moment, because we all know how important he is. And listen, it seems, at least based on this not being an Achilles injury, from what we're all sort of, what the Knicks are putting out there, that the worst case scenario has been averted. But is he going to be out for 6 weeks? If he's out for extended period of time, I mean, it is going to be a lot for this team to overcome in terms of what he does on both sides of the floor. So it is a real sort of moment here that we're going to have to wait with some bated breath until we get some more clarity on how long he's going to be out here. But OG Anunoby, notoriously not a fast healer. I mean, since he, thank you, Mark, since being acquired, 52-20, including tonight, since he was traded with us. I believe those are games he's played in. So he is, we talk about the contract and whether or not he's overpaid, and maybe we want more from him, especially at parts of this season on the defensive end, and some of the games, some of the offensive deficiencies like tend to pop up every now and then, that he's just doesn't have the sort of athletic dexterity that is required to be a true like number 2, number 3 scorer. But you saw it tonight how important he is. And in terms of value, there aren't many players in the league more valuable to their team than OG Anunoby, despite him being the third best player on this team. He really does sort of make this thing go from good team to potentially great team. And we're going to all hope collectively, prayer circle, right? We're all going to hope that this is a relatively minor injury and he's back in short order. But who knows? I think we're all sort of going to have to wait and see on that one. Thank you, John. I really appreciate that. CC Kirby, thank you so much for the super chat. Even with a loss, this is one of those games that reminds you why Josh Hart is the heart and soul of this team. My favorite Knick in a long time. Yeah, I mean, CC, thank you so much for this super chat, because I do think that this was quintessential Josh Hart, just doing everything that you could possibly ask of him, and doing it as well as you can possibly expect. We all know what his deficiencies can cause on offense. There is a spacing sort of limitation to him that is just real, and something the Knicks have to contend with. And when you pair him with a guy like Achua, it becomes even more of a problem. 100%. But it is important sometimes, as fans of this team and fans of these players, just to acknowledge, as CC just astutely says here, that a game like this just reminds you of what a warrior this player is. 38 minutes, 11 of 16 from the field, 26 points, 13 rebounds, 11 assists, a plethora of loose balls that he was able to gobble up. Guarded LeBron James for most of the second half. Continued to push the ball in transition. I mean, somehow had the energy to do these things and have the toughest assignment. Make shots. I'm pulling up the hustle numbers here. I think NBA.com has finally got those. Only have him down for 2 deflections, though I think I do think they tend to undercount that number. It seemed like he had more than that. It seemed like at least in the first quarter, he was getting his hands on some of the Lakers passes and disrupting what they were trying to do. He was fantastic. And then some of the shot making, he had one against LeBron in the second half. I mean, there are certain things he was able to do. Make tough shots. Again, Lakers are going to live with this because it's a Josh Hart contested mid-ranger or a Jalen Brunson or Mikal Bridges wide open 3. You're living with that scenario, but you can acknowledge that this is playing into the Lakers' hands, but also state how impressive it is for Josh Hart to be able to do this and do it at the level in terms of his efficiency. His finishing again. He had the finish around LeBron that was really impressive in the second half. There was that one play where he dunked it where LeBron seemed like he was going to have one of those patented chase down blocks, but Hart was able to extend out and finish with a 2-hand dunk. So he was awesome as an individual. It's just that as a team, in the team context, it was too much. It was too constricted. And that is part of the Josh Hart experience. And that's why both things could be true at the same time. There's those cat double teams and Brunson driving into a herd of Lakers. That can happen in part because of Hart's lack of shooting. And when it's Cat and he's flying around the court and he's driving and he's shooting and Bridges is playing well and Brunson shooting well, it works. And then when you get McBride in the game, it works. Tonight, it just wasn't going to work. Lakers were too good on defense. They had too many big wings guarding the ball and playing in gaps. The game plan was strong. The talent was really high level. And they executed the game plan to perfection. And you have to just sometimes acknowledge that. But it was a great game by Josh Hart on an individual basis. So thank you, CC, for that question. And we'll break quickly and get back to the super chats. But first, let's tell you about BetUS. Did you know BetUS also has a casino? For all of my followers who like slots or live casino dealers, take advantage of BetUS's amazing sign-up bonus of 200%. A sign-up bonus up to $5,000 or 250% for crypto. Sign-up bonus up to $5,000. Get ready for a rush with BetUS Casino. Generous promotions and tournaments make every play even more rewarding. Sign up now and experience the difference. And as always, use promo code YouTube150 to receive a 150% bonus on your first deposit, as well as a 125% bonus on your next 2 deposits up to $2,000. Remember, gambling involves risk. Please only gamble with funds that you can afford to lose. All forms of betting carry financial risk, and it is down to the individual to make bets with or without the assistance of information provided. Well, I don't know what the bets that were made on this game here, but if you got the Cat and Brunson overs on the points, you lost some cash. So if you're Knicks fans, that compounded the disappointment for tonight. All right, back to the super chats, and we resume with Uptown Hoodie. Uptown Hoodie, thank you so much. Shamet guarding LeBron was more suspicious than the Rozier allegations. Unacceptable night for Towns. He was shook and unable to steady himself. Yeah, those Shamet on LeBron reps were rough. And it was funny. It was when LeBron made the shots, like part of me was like, well, listen, it's a comfortable turnaround mid-range shot, but it's still a mid-range turnaround jumper. Are you better off just living with that and just seeing where that takes you versus sending help and getting put in the blender? So I don't think you could, as I thought about it, you can't not send help. You cannot try to avoid that sort of mismatch because again, LeBron was seemed to be working his way into the game. Like that would have eventually, that sort of matchup would have eventually been a straight line drive to the rim, and the Knicks just weren't going to be able to handle that. So the Shaman on LeBron reps were just not fun. Got LeBron in a rhythm, and he didn't really lose it through most of that game. And then regarding Towns, I do think there was an element here that he was just off his game mentally based on how the Lakers were guarding him, the lack of quality shot attempts. I do think that was a real factor here, and I acknowledge that he did not respond well to it. And if you process like what could have he done differently to make this outcome more prosperous for himself and the Knicks, and there's just not, at least at this point, and I'll go back and I'll watch the film to see if there is something else that I would see on a second watch. But watching that game, like his reads were poor at times, but we also have to factor in, as I have talked about several times now, the sea of bodies that he was sort of trying to navigate here. And as good a passer as he is, when you don't have clean cuts off his post ups, things can get a little muddied up. Now, I do want to also state, like in the first quarter, the Knicks went to their delay action and they would run their split cuts. They got a dunk, I believe it was Anunoby, or a finish on a split cut, and then Bridges had another one where Towns just smoked the pass, and I don't know if he was going to try to throw an alley oop or got kind of caught in between, but it was two free runs to the rim when the Knicks had their starting five out, and Cat was in again delay outside the 3-point line as a passing hub. That was probably when the Knicks offense looked at their most lethal, was in those two occasions. They only did it twice. They only scored on it twice. Should have scored on it. They only scored on it once. Should have scored on it twice here. And they didn't go back to it a lot. And then once Anunoby left the game, then you just didn't have the sort of spacing requirements needed to run that action and have the spaced out floor, because that only works when you have your 5-out look, and then you can get your split cuts and then the back cut down the middle of the lane. Knicks got good stuff out of it a couple of times, but it was predicated on the requisite amount of shooting. And then once Anunoby leaves the game, it limits it. But I think maybe going into more of that like delay, some zoom action here where Cat is not setting the first down screen, but he's the DHO hub, to allow him to either complete the DHO or to fake it and then get maybe a driving gap to the rim. But in this particular game, it didn't make his driving lanes they were very, very constricted, and he doesn't make great reads out of his drive. So it compounds the problem. He had the one drive where he hit Deuce in the first half for a 3 on the right corner, but that was one of those where like he took one dribble, Deuce relocated deeper into the corner, and Cat found him. It was a really good read, but when Cat puts his head down and it's 2-3 dribbles, like that ball it's either a finish, a missed layup, or an offensive foul. Like there's just likely not going to be a pass involved here. And that is another something that Knicks are going to have to figure out as teams scout the Knicks heavily into a potential long playoff series. Like Cat's drives, while huge for the Knicks offense and their diversity and the weapons and the counters to Cat shooting and all the things that he can do, his tunnel vision, his propensity to either drive into someone's chest and get an offensive foul, or do that upper hook move where he gets called for the offensive foul, where he hooks underneath. You know, it there is a limitation to your offense when you're spamming cat drives, but it is certainly, it needs to be a weapon. But against the Lakers in this game, like, those drives just weren't there, and they weren't there for Jalen Brunson either. I mean, I thought he almost had it as tough as Towns. I mean, Brunson made some shots in the sort of the short mid range area, um, step away, fadeaways where he was going. He would try to drive in, but again, everything was sort of going away from the basket when he would make it. Um, it is in the zone where you're sort of comfortable with the shot. It's like his shooting 15 to 16 feet, that pivot away move that he does. Like, it's a upper 40s shot, like, in terms of the efficiency, but it's not elite offense if that's a big source of like what you need to do. And getting into the zone where he is at his best is just outside the restricted area in the paint. Like, that shot for that sort of floater push shot, that was not there. And the Lakers credits them, because it's not just the getting into the paint, it's the drive through the nail into that area where you can't stop it when he gets into that zone. But if you watch the game, how many drives are coming almost around the paint, and he never actually he would rarely get all the way into the paint, especially in the second half. Like, he tried to get some of these like floaters over the top, but it was multiple defenders contesting in the paint. Brunson is at his best when he can get into the paint, have his primary defender on his hip, and shoot it just far enough outside the restricted zone to where the shot blocking presence is nullified. And that was not an option against this Lakers team. Just using the Knicks' lack of spacing after the Anunoby injury to great effect. And I think, again, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but it is fair to sometimes put most of the credit on the opponent. You can acknowledge the Knicks could have done things differently to give themselves a better chance. But I thought the Lakers just played a wonderful game and had a wonderful game plan. So shout out JJ Redick. He came to play as much as LeBron James tonight. Thank you, Uptown Hoodie. Appreciate that. Meki, Jaidi, I apologize if I'm butchering your last name, but thank you so much for your super chat. I really appreciate it. I love you guys, but I'll buy all the Girl Scout cookies in the world if we just stop KFS socials at Macri. I don't know if the Girl Scout cookie situation is still an option. Maybe we can put the link if his daughter is still selling those things at the bottom of the show notes. But yeah, I don't know what the record is with the T squared socials. It can't be great. But listen, the fact that KFS is doing these things, and I'm in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Shout out Duke, who put a hurting on our UNC Tar Heels. Cooper Flagg, pretty good. Might be a good NBA player. I've unfortunately not even been able to attend one of these things, but they're certainly a good time. And it has been a great relationship, KFS and T squared. I believe this is an anniversary of the original T squared social. So shout out to T squared. Of course, shout out Andrew and Macri and Jeremy. I think Benji was there. Sean was there. Probably missing someone. Everyone there that was enjoying as much as you can enjoy this game with the great supporters. fans of the product. Just another great night, I'm sure, despite the loss. And we'll continue doing these, Mekhi. I know that. So hopefully, if the record is not up to par, we can certainly possibly change the trajectory of that. But and yeah, we got the Mark just put the link in the chat for them. So if you guys do want to get some Girl Scout cookies, check out the chat for that link. Thank you, Mekhi. Appreciate that. Zach Horowitz. Thank you, Zach, for hanging out with us and the super chat. Lakers were just another game for New York. This was the Lakers Super Bowl. Not overly worried, except for OG. Love what you do, DJ. Keep doing you. Chin up, folks. Yeah, I mean, that's a completely fair and reasonable take, Zach. I mean, this was based on LeBron's agenda coming into this game and how he performed. He clearly had some cruel intentions for the Knicks. He can't do this on a night-to-night basis, so clearly saving a little bit of juice for MSG for the show. So I do think there is certainly something to say about that. Now, Knicks played a poor overall basketball game, so there is that. But in terms of just the energy and the juice on the floor, Lakers just had a little more. You know, I thought the Knicks, the way they were closing out on some of these pick and pop above the break threes just weren't urgent enough. You know, they just didn't have like that extra level to get to shrink that closeout just a little more. And I think that was a big issue in terms of Lakers getting that rhythm. And, you know, teams, when they can get into a flow, you know, it tends to snowball at times. And I think shooting in a comfortable manner can be contagious. And the Lakers certainly got into a nice rhythm, especially in that, you know, in the second quarter when the offense really started to hum in terms of like their attacks and their ways to counter the Knicks drop coverage and how they were utilizing it. And Austin Reeves just gave the Knicks a lot of problems in terms of his ability to gain advantages, get two to the ball. We all know LeBron, but you know, the Lakers are shot making. I mean, Rui's above the break shooting, and he's really been known throughout his career as more of a corner three guy, but he was making above the break threes, many of them wide open, and many of them probably could have been less open if the closeout was a little better. But it is one game. It is one game, and we are going to have to acknowledge that while also, you know, being fair in terms of the performance, which just was not good enough for our Knicks, and we have to call it like it is. All right, quick timeout here for the out of town scoreboard presented by T Squared Social. Get a free beer, free draft beer when you tell them KFS sent you. Visit tsquaredsocial.com to learn about club memberships, trivia nights, sports leagues, and much more. That's tsquaredsocial.com. And hopefully Andrew Claudio will not be there for trivia night, because that man has the greatest memory for trivia of anyone I've ever met in the sporting world. If there was, you know, that any sort of like contest game show, it was Stump the Schwab was the one ESPN had years ago. Andrew Claudio would have had a chance to stump the Schwab. He is a legitimate savant when it comes to sports trivia. But sports trivia nights at T Square Social, I'm sure, is a great time. So be there. Tell them KFS sent you and get a draft beer on us. All right. So Heat got a win against the Spurs, 105-103. Heat go to 24-23. Bam had a 30-12-9 night. Bam has not been amazing on offense this year. So he has a big one against the Spurs. I don't think Wemby played in that game. I'm just going to pull that up just to verify he did not play. All right. So no Wembanyama. He get a victory. against the San Antonio Spurs. Of course, the Spurs in the news based on the De'Aaron Fox trade machinations. So we'll see where they go with that. The Nets got a win against the Houston Rockets, 110-98. Nets now 16-33. Zaire Williams goes for 21 for the Nets. The Wizards got a win against the Timberwolves, 105-103. Tough loss for the T-Wolves, losing to the Wizards. Kyle Kuzma, remember, he doesn't care about player development anymore. He's getting his. He goes for 31-8. So Wizards get a nice little win. Thunder just keep rolling along, 144-110 over the Sacramento Kings. Kings now 24-24. Aaron Wiggins scored 41 points. What? All right, hold on here. Aaron Wiggins scored 41 points on 30 shots. The man took 14 threes, made 6, had 14 rebounds. What is happening? That's insane. I did a double take. I never would have thought I would see 41 points next to Aaron Wiggins' name here. That is, the talent on this team is it's just another level. Thunder now 38-9. Nuggets got a win, bouncing back after their loss to the Knicks. They beat the Hornets 107-104. Nikola Jokic, a ho-hum 28-13, 17 assist night for the player, up for another MVP with Shai Gilgeous. We'll see if he can get another one. The Pacers, they got a really nice gritty win against the Hawks. Saw a lot of this one. They win 132-127. I thought the Hawks actually played a really strong game. Pacers ended up winning late with just because there's no Jalen Johnson. It just felt like the Hawks just ran out of steam a little bit. Trae Young had 34 and 17, but Pacers balanced attack. Nembhard had a really strong defensive game for him. Siakam goes for 29. The Jazz beat the Magic 113-99. Magic just really struggling on the offensive end. And I saw this earlier. I just want to point it out. Paolo Banchero, 4 for 19, 0 for 6 from 3, 9 points, a -17, while Franz Wagner goes for 37. He took 23 free throws, made 18 of them, only shot 8 of 21. The Magic have major significant offensive concerns. Their catch and shoot numbers are as bad as any team in recent memory. Just the efficiency of their 3-point shooting from off the catch is just catastrophic. And it really, I didn't see the game, so I don't want to make any conclusions on this, but listen, Paolo can't go 4 for 19, but also you can imagine how teams are loading up help on him with the lack of shooting on that roster. And then the only game remaining in play right now, the Trailblazers, suddenly a little spry, winning some games of late. They are leading the Suns 110-93 with 5 and change left in the fourth quarter. That is your T-Squared out of town scoreboard. As always, thank you, T-Squared, for your partnership. And any more super chats, Mark? We do have more Ice Man Sham coming to. We have 3 for Ice Man Sham, so let's go rapid fire here with the Iceman. First quarter, I thought the Lakers were just on fire to start, but no, the Lakers just abused us schematically on both ends. Fantastic point. So in the first quarter, it did seem like this was Lakers just having a abnormal shooting night. Didn't seem like they were running much offense. It was a lot of freelance, random isolations. Knicks got caught in coverage a couple of times, but it just didn't seem like the Lakers were running functional sets and that the Knicks were going to be in good shape if this was going to be how the Lakers were going to continue on. But to your point, Iceman Sham, it flipped quarters 2 through 4, and I made the point earlier. And then it became, we're just going to attack Karl Anthony Towns as relentlessly as we can. And they did that, and they did it to absolute perfection. The Knicks didn't respond well to it. Knicks were caught between allowing Cat to switch, which they did a couple of times. Didn't one Reeves hit a three above the break. It did bank it in. So, you kind of give Cat the benefit of the doubt on that one. Cat got a foul on another Reeves drive. It's not, I know the thought of just letting Cat switch these actions is the thought or the idea here, but I think that is certainly something you could do and should be part of your plan B, C, D, but it can't be the option A. And I think there's just a limitation of doing that. There's certain times he can guard it in space and it look fine. But I think I personally, I do think it needs to be something you go to on a pretty, almost surgical way where it's very specific against certain guards, wings. But Austin Reeves is a lot to handle when he's got the ball and when he's got a live dribble. And I don't think Towns, at least from the first watch, held up great in that. So I don't know if that's something they could have maybe tapped into a little more. I think it speaks to the idea the Lakers offense really did a good job of how the Knicks were defending the scheme, that deep drop and the execution was poor out of Towns. I probably, as I'm processing this, I probably would have had Towns as sort of like a half measure, come up towards the level a little bit. But again, then you get the situation of like pocket pass. Now you're in the paint and now you have an advantage. And then what does that do for backline help? That probably would have been the choice here. I do think once Anunoby leaves the game, he's so critical to their backline defense and their tagging responsibilities. I do think it potentially limits you, and I can understand maybe leaning back into the more conservative approach, but I would have liked a slightly more aggressive show and recover for Cat to give them a different look. But then you draw the risk of cracking that, and then you're at a huge, you're at an odd man advantage getting into the paint. Your defensive rebounding is compromised, and then Cat potentially can get into some more foul trouble. So there are no great answers when Cat is your 5. Knicks have gotten by because his defensive rebounding has been amazing, and most teams can't stretch them in that same way here. Wait, can you check that Shams tweet, Mark? I'm almost like not even. I'm stunned reading it. Give me a thumbs up if I'm reading like our actual account from Shams. I'm processing this right now. I'm about to read the most insane.
Hey man, I'm hopping up here because I'm with you. I'll let you do this, but yeah, as far as I can tell, it is Shams Charania, blue check mark. It's real. I will let you do the honors though. And I can't believe this is coming at close to the end of our show. I'm gonna get back off of here and let you do the rest.
I'm going to read, I think, the most insane trade in the history of the NBA. Shams Charania is reporting the Dallas Mavericks are trading Luka Doncic, Maxi Kleber, Markieff Morris to the Los Angeles Lakers for Anthony Davis, Max Christie, and a 2029 first-round pick. Sources tell ESPN. 3-team deal that includes Utah. What? The Dallas Mavericks are trading Luka Doncic to the Lakers for Anthony Davis, Max Christie, and a 2029 first round pick. Here's another tweet from Shams. Yes, this is real. Sources tell ESPN. Full trade. Lakers, Luka, Maxey, Morris, Mavericks, Davis, Christie, 2029 first from the Lakers. Jazz, Hood Schifino, Clippers, 2025 second. Mavericks, 2025 second. I'm almost. It's now on the ESPN official account. So this is not Shams got hacked putting this out there. ESPN's official Twitter handle is reporting the trade. Mavericks are trading Luka, Maxi Kleber, Markieff Morris to the Los Angeles Lakers for Anthony Davis, Max Christie, and a 2029 first round pick. Are you kidding me? How? Now we know why LeBron had so much energy tonight. Dude was about to get Luka. LeBron James and Luka Doncic are going to be on the same basketball team. Holy fuck. I swear to you, we were just about to put a bow on a random game in February, and we get. Has there ever been a more insane trade than this? Jake Fisher. I've got two sources with direct knowledge of the situation confirming Shams' report. Luka Doncic to the Lakers, Anthony Davis to the Mavericks. Oh my God. To react to that one out of the blue, this was not a Luka's on the block type thing, and we're fielding offers. This was in the shadow of darkness, figuring this out and just setting the NBA and the sports world on fire. Saturday night, now Sunday morning, East Coast time. One of the most shocking developments, and I've been watching this league intently since 1995. I cannot remember a more earth-shattering trade than what I just read to you. Luka Doncic is going to play basketball with LeBron James. Fred Katz. I can confirm Shams Charania is reporting. I can confirm, that was not hacked. Sources say the Lakers are acquiring Luka Doncic in a trade that will send Anthony Davis to Dallas. Chris Haynes confirms it as well. Bobby Marks. I mean, I'm at a loss for words, at least coherent words, is a freaking understatement. Yeah, Mark just in the chat, this shakes the NBA to its core. This is just a massive, massive sea change here. I haven't begun to process like what this actually means for this Lakers team this year. But what we can say definitively right now, and I know there's a few super chats to get to. We will get to them before we wrap up, but we have to give this incredible blockbuster trade its due. What this trade does now is that it gives the Lakers franchise someone that LeBron can just hand the baton to in a year, in 2 years, and be in as good a shape as you can possibly expect. The Lakers are going to go from what is the future? Like an hour ago, it was fair to question, like, what is the future of the Lakers? What does the future look like with a mid-30s Anthony Davis if they extend him? What is the Lakers franchise look post LeBron? They are going to transition from LeBron. First, we're going to get LeBron James and Luka together. And then they are going to have an opportunity for LeBron to pass the baton to Luka. And it is going to, as seamlessly as you can possibly hope to be, it is going to extend their run of being a contender for another decade. And I'm sure they're going to have, once, LeBron is off the books will be clean, and they can, I'm sure, be right up there to get another star. But they have Luka Doncic on their basketball team. The Mavs have traded Luka. Like, what was going on there that necessitated them making this move right now? I can only imagine that they were given indications from Luka that he had no interest in extending there long term. I presume that is the only idea here. And to go the route they went in, to go with Anthony Davis as the centerpiece, maybe to try and piece together a pseudo contender this year and into the future. I don't know exactly what this means for Dallas. And what is clear is that this franchise had drafted a legitimate MVP caliber player and had him on their roster in his mid-20s and has now traded that player away. They've now traded that player away for an off-injured, yes, an elite when he's healthy, big man in Anthony Davis. Max Christie, a good, solid young player. And one single 2029 first-round pick. There are times when this league almost pulls the rug from under you with its player movement. This is like no other there's never been I think a more shocking, out of nowhere, mind-bending, league-altering move possibly in history of this league. Yeah, Mark in the chat says arguably the most shocking trade in the history of the NBA history. I don't. If there's one that would be in contention along with it, I can't. I can't name it. Forget just. It's not just the Luka part. I mean, Luka for Anthony Davis, 2 Hall of Fame talents being traded for each other is insane. And for Luka, just a guy of his caliber to now have the opportunity, at least for this season and possibly more, to have the opportunity to play on the same team as LeBron James. This one is going to take a lot of time for a lot of people to process. I swear to you, I saw this and I stared at it for probably too long on a live program and couldn't believe what my eyes were seeing. This is from Bobby Marks. There are major financial implications for Luka Doncic with this trade. He was in line to receive a 5-year, $345 million contract this summer. Doncic is no longer Supermax eligible. It's an interesting wrinkle for sure. And you wonder how much, if at all, Luka pushed for this. Bobby doesn't have, at least in this tweet here, how much money he is potentially giving up. Certainly the playing in LA, playing for the Lakers, has its own value monetarily. And he could be looking at just the sheer fact of playing with LeBron James and playing for that organization and extending their long term as worth the money he was giving up. And I would say this is, I think, well, I don't know. I mean, he also may not have wanted this. I mean, there's also that. Yossi Gozlan, who's great work with NBA cap stuff. Luka will be eligible to extend with the Lakers this summer for 4 years, $228 million. So, yeah, that's well over $100 million difference there in terms of overall value. That's a lot of money that he is now ineligible to receive, and players historically have been unwilling to give up that sort of payday. So it'll be fascinating to hear from Luka in terms of what he was thinking in this. Did he push for this? I'm sure we'll get reporting, I'm sure in hours, regarding his desire or to either stay with Dallas or to be moved on, or to move on to somewhere else. And maybe it was only the Lakers that he wanted to go, and maybe the Dallas Mavericks were willing to sort of acquiesce to him. Fascinated to hear about how that all played out. Because if Luka was truly on the market, it's interesting because you don't know where Dallas was Dallas thinking we are not rebuilding. If we're going to do this trade, we are bringing in another all-star level player, and we're going to try to maximize wins this year and next year and beyond if they extend Davis. Because you could have gone the other direction and just reshuffled the deck and gone complete rebuild. This from ESPN's Tim McMahon, friend of the pod. I believe that defense wins championships. Mavs GM Nico Harrison told ESPN regarding his motivation to trade Luka Doncic for Anthony Davis. I believe that getting an all defensive center and an all NBA player with a defensive mindset gives us a better chance. We're built to win now and in the future. Well, there you go. This was Dallas trading Luka for a player that, in the mind of Nico Harrison, is giving them, it seems, reading between the lines here, a better chance to win. Better chance to win a championship. Anthony Davis, Kyrie Irving with PJ Washington and our friend Quentin Grimes, the role players they have. Can you talk yourself into that team having the same ceiling than if they just had Luka? And now you have also added Max Christie to the mix here, who's a legitimate rotation player and was starting for the Lakers and performing well. It's hard to make that case. It's hard to make the case when we saw Luka last year against Dallas, and we've seen him have these all-world, one-of-one performances offensively. It's hard to make the case that this trade gives them a better ceiling to win a championship. Anthony Davis has never shown the ability, other than the bubble, playing with LeBron James, who was still in the tail end of his prime. He's never shown the ability to be that sort of player, to lead a team in that way. And he would be, as good as Kyrie Irving is, the hope would have to be that Anthony Davis is your all NBA, best player on your team, best player in a playoff series type guy. And does anyone have any confidence in Anthony Davis at this stage of his career can be the best player in a playoff series for 2 to 3 rounds? It just seems far-fetched. So I don't know if this is Nico Harrison being pushed in a direction that he didn't want to go to and now is trying to justify it based on. All right, so here's an important note. Here's Shams again. The Mavericks approached the Lakers recently and offered Luka Doncic, sources tell ESPN. Lakers met and believed the 25-year-old Doncic had ability to be the face of their franchise for the next decade, while giving Anthony Davis a win now move in Dallas. So according to Shams, the Mavericks approached the Lakers, and the Lakers met and believe Luka could be the face of their franchise, as I said earlier, take the baton from LeBron, while also giving Davis a win now move in Dallas. So by that report, it's wild to say this. Cheers. Fucking crazy. The Mavericks went to the Lakers and offered Luka to them. I don't know what goes on in terms of machinations about how much more you can get if you make someone available to the wider league, but it is just a position I have that if you're trading a player with immense trade value, it doesn't make sense to me to only restrict yourself to a single basketball team. We have not gotten a report yet, and maybe we will, that Luka wanted LA and was only going to go to LA and didn't want to go anywhere else. And the Mavericks felt that they had to sort of play ball and acquiesce to those demands. We have not received that report. No one's suggested that, at least from my perspective, doing this as the news trickles in. But to trade Luka and to not make his availability known to the league is, I think, a failure and a disservice to your organization. And it's almost unforgivable. And I get they got Anthony Davis in this trade, and they got a 2029 first round pick that may have some value here. but they still traded a 25-year-old future Hall of Famer. That if you told me in a decade was being talked about as one of the 10 best players in the history of the sport, like I wouldn't call that like a crazy thought here. Again, from Tim McMahon, the Mavs had major concerns about moving forward with Luka Doncic due to this constant conditioning issues. Okay. And the looming commitment of another Supermax contract extension this summer. So this is Tim McMahon, friend of the program. Also, like, where is this news coming? Where is he getting his sourcing from? He's getting it likely from the Dallas side. So we have to be aware of and have a little skepticism regarding where Tim McMahon is likely pulling his sourcing from. He's as well sourced with Dallas as anyone in the league reporting on the NBA. So I need to put that out there. So when I hear that there's concerns about conditioning from Luka and maybe being weary of committing to him long term, this to me feels like trying to justify the fact that you just traded a 25-year-old MVP caliber player off your team without potentially making his availability known to the wider NBA. His conditioning has been a sore spot since he entered the NBA. His conditioning was a sore spot last year when he was torching the Minnesota Timberwolves in the playoffs. The Mavericks are going to do a full court press, PR-wise, to justify what they just did. And I think we all need to understand that that's what's happening here. Anthony Davis is a great basketball player when he's healthy, and still on his best night is one of the 10 best players in the sport, potentially even top 5 when he is really rolling on both sides of the floor. But his age and what you're going to commit to, we're talking about long-term commitments, right? So the Mavericks are concerned about Luka and are going to just hand Anthony Davis a contract extension through his mid-30s and not have worry that his body is not going to hold up because of his myriad of injuries. I don't know, man. I think this is, I'm highly skeptical of anything coming out of Dallas right now because you traded Luka. I get it. Anthony Davis is a great player. You traded the 25-year-old that's got a decade left of being a perennial MVP candidate. Absolutely insane. Mark, I know we have more chats about this game. It's going to be a bit of a strange transition, but I do think we need to honor the super chats that did come in regarding the game that we just witnessed, which all of a sudden has, in the grand scheme of things, like very little importance about what we just read. And we do have one regarding the trade, so we'll get to that too. So let's fire up the remaining super chats on the basketball game we just watched as we try to process the most wild news breaking moment, one of the most in sports history. Iceman Sham again. The way they abused Shamit too early hurt our depth. I agree. And I think that was probably made Tibbs a little resistant to going back to a lineup that was on the smaller end to be exposed. So I do think the early Shamit minutes here did lead to Tibbs maybe being a little too resistant to lean into a more offensive centric approach. But I do want to acknowledge Shamit's deficiencies, size-wise, physicality-wise. It's a tough ask for him to guard wings. And then the other aspect to this is that the guy can't shoot anymore. So Landry Shamet, his shooting the last 2 years, this year, I know it's a small sample size, but last year as well, has just not been good. Like his reputation as a shooter transcends his actual production. And I'm worried about the shoulder. His release point, at least from my vantage point, seems to have been lower to a point where I'm worried about him getting his shot off unless he is incredibly open. He was wide open on one catch and shoot three and smashed it off the side of the backboard. But if he is not a real shooter, there just isn't a place for him, not only on the Knicks, but in the NBA, just to call it like it is. I know he's fought defensively, and I think he keeps the ball in front pretty well, but there's just times where his lack of physicality, height, strength, quickness, agility, the whole gamut is just too much for him to overcome. So I do think his early troubles impacted the Knicks long term in this game. Thank you, Iceman Shams. Appreciate that. All right, we got one more. This is the last one for Iceman Shams, but thank you so much for checking in with us. Really appreciate it. I also wonder why Tibbs, after the OG injury, didn't try Mikal on LeBron instead of Josh. Yeah, I mean, you could have gone in that direction. I thought Hart, in the few post ups by LeBron, held up really well. Got beat on the screen reject on that one dunk down the middle of the lane, kind of leaning into the screen a little bit. LeBron rejected, got downhill. Not ideal, of course. Yeah, I think it's a tough one for Mikal. I do think his screen navigation is superior to Josh's, but I do think you could run into the situation of LeBron like putting him in the paint in a post-up situation. Now you can argue that a LeBron James post-up is just a better outcome than LeBron creating with a ball screen, top of the key. Fair. I don't hate the idea. I think overall Hart did a commensurate job against LeBron. Got beat a couple times, but overall, I don't think you can ask for more. And I don't think Mikal would have performed much better, to be honest. But it's a fair thought. You would have also like Hart was expending like a massive amount of energy. So there's also that aspect of it, try to preserve him a little bit, but maybe he's just doesn't need preservation. He's just always going at 100 miles an hour, despite minutes and all those things. All right. We have some more, so let's keep it moving. Robert Cross. Thank you, Robert, for hanging out. And it was nice seeing you during the Patreon town hall. Appreciate all of you that have decided to join us on the Brunson tier. Benji and I doing a lot of great work. If I do say so myself, on there with our film sessions, mailbags, Benji's grade books, extended grade books. So a lot going on there with that. So check us out on Patreon if you are interested. But Robert Cross, thank you. And his comment is, good to see you, DJ. If OG is out for a spell and Mitch returns, would you theoretically start Robinson and play Cat at the 4? Yeah, that's a interesting thought. I think it is something worth considering. I would probably lean with Achua playing the 4 in that case, or go with Hart as, keep Hart in the game. Basically bring Deuce in, keep Hart in the lineup as your nominal 4. Cat at the 5. Deuce is your combo. Brunson, Mikal. I think that lineup actually is interesting to me. Then you run into the situation then with like, how do you split the Achua Robinson minutes off the bench? It gets clunky, with goes to show like what the Anunoby injury can do for the rotation. If Tibbs wants to go with the 2 big lineup, I think the Achua Cat combination has been good enough to where I would be more comfortable with that. And then Robinson off the bench, but it's certainly not the best situation, but if I had to pick one, I think I would go Achua. But I do want to see the Robinson Cat pairing. I think it's worth seeing what the size of Robinson can do, especially as a screener, to maybe open up Cat as a shooter. And that does seem counterintuitive, but I pointed this out a few times. Cat's 3-point volume last year was higher with Rudy Gobert on the floor than when he was playing without Rudy Gobert. And that is directly linked to Gobert's off-ball screening and the fact that he would look for Cat in these trail opportunities to screen down on his man to free up Cat as a shooter. So I think if Robinson can maybe tap into that a little bit, I don't know if he has the awareness slash attribute as a screener to do it at that level, but I think it is worth trying to maybe boost the Cat 3-point volume up a little bit. But thank you, Robert. It's a good thought, and I do want to see Cat and Robinson play together. I'm very, very curious to see how those two play together. Certainly get a ton of size there, and I think at this point we are transitioning to some super chats that were directly reacting to this insane trade, and we kick it off with Ryan Shepard. Thank you so much, Ryan. Aside from Luka demanding a trade at gunpoint, how is it possible Dallas makes this trade? Legitimately stunned. Still stunned, personally. I insane, wild. According to the way Tim McMahon is now positioning this, and Nico Harrison's comments, which were, I'll read them again. This Tim McMahon had the quote. This is from Nico Harrison, Mavs GM. I believe that defense wins championships. I believe that getting an all-defensive center and an all-NBA player with a defensive mindset gives us a better chance. We're built to win now and in the future. So by that comment and the fact that Tim McMahon is reporting that Luka's conditioning and they were resistant to giving him a super max played into this, makes me think that maybe Luka did not put the gun to the head of the Mavericks and force his way out. I'm also waiting to hear more because I don't necessarily buy the fact that the Mavericks were so worried about Luka's conditioning, but it's an insane thing to have traded him. Mark Stein, another guy, tapped into what's going on there. All right, here we go. Luka Doncic did not request a trade. Leak sources tell the Stein line. The Mavericks did this on their own accord, getting back Anthony Davis, but only one future first-round pick from the Lakers in 2029 for a 25-year-old regarded as a future MVP. So key in on Mark Stein about what he just said and what he thinks about this. The Mavericks did this on their own accord, getting back Anthony Davis, but only one first-round pick in 2029 for a 25-year-old regarded as a future MVP. That is Mark Stein telling you that he thinks the Mavericks are out of their freaking minds. And he can't say it like that because he's a professional and he has relationships to maintain, but that is what he's telling you. Luka did not request a trade. That's clear. I think we can safely say that did not happen. But we are also getting this trickle in, this idea that the Mavericks are now better off based on what their GM is saying and what's coming out of that franchise, that they are better off with Anthony Davis. Now and in the future? Like how? They could have intel behind the scenes that Luka really is chronically out of shape, and there might be something to the idea that they are petrified of giving him a super max and seeing how he'll age into his late 20s. But this to me is just a complete failure from this organization. An organization, by the way, that bailed and let a future All-NBA player in Jalen Brunson walk out the door. They have now traded Luka Doncic at 25 years old without, it seems, making it known to the NBA that they are willing to trade this player. Again, it was Shams, I believe, was the report that the Mavericks went to the Lakers and offered Luka Doncic. Try in your minds right now to just imagine the amount of interest that player would have if he was made available to the league. And I get there's probably something I'm not processing regarding like why you would do this with only one single team. And maybe Anthony Davis was the one player. And maybe they back channeled some things about like other players that they would be interested in that teams were not willing to trade for Luka. I just don't know how you do it. I don't know how you go to one team and you basically offer up the best player you've ever had potentially in your franchise. And I know they had Dirk. And I get that. But this guy is 25 years old and can win multiple MVPs. Multiple. Thank you, Ryan. Really appreciate it. Insane. Iceman Shams again. Something has to have gone wrong with Luka's injury. I don't think so, because I don't think, and I know that he's going to have to pass a physical and the Lakers are going to do their due diligence here, but I don't think the Lakers would have traded for him if there was major concern about the injury. If the conditioning, if his effort level off the court is a major concern, it seems that's a real thing, then Lakers are rolling the dice a little bit here. But they are also like now not having to pay Anthony Davis into his mid-30s. So there's risk on both ends of this. And again, as I said earlier, and I want to pull up Anthony Davis's contract status here just so I have the actual numbers here to be clear. So going to Spotrac now, because if they're going to be willing to give Anthony Davis a long-term extension, are you not as worried about his ability to maintain health and value as an All-NBA player into his mid-30s? Does he not put fear into your mind as you sit at home with like me processing this? Looks like Spotrac is not working because everyone and their mother is trying to figure out this trade and going on there. Mark, if you don't mind, try to pull up Anthony Davis's contract status. I just want to know like when his how long he's under contract for, and try to figure it out in terms of like giving him an extension here. But to me, he is just as much, if not more, of a concern long term based on age and based on injury history than Luka. So to me, that's like he's more of a red flag. And I understand we're not in the Mavericks organization. So we're not seeing Luka work. We're not seeing his commitment off the court and getting into shape. So, but my baseline is to be skeptical of that reporting. I'm skeptical of like that being the reason why you would trade him. And if that is the reason why you're trading him, then I think that is just a bad job of an organization. I can't imagine you have an MVP level player that's 25 years old that theoretically is interested in a long-term extension to basically play through his prime, and to feel like you have to trade that player because you're worried about his conditioning is insane to me. So the deal So he's got 5 years, 189. So he is under contract, Mark, through 2028. Is that what? Okay. So I mean, that's the Mavericks could be looking at this as a situation here where you get a 2-year, 3-year window of Anthony Davis and Kyrie Irving and the solid role players they have. And then if it doesn't work out, then you're basically in a situation where you can reset your franchise, which, listen, in 3 years, we could be looking at this like, oh, and Luka not performing maybe at the level we would have thought and think, wow, the Mavericks really dodged one here. But I have a hard time rationalizing what the Mavericks just did. To me, it's insane. And if you're a Mavericks fan, you are just. I was blindsided by the Porzingis trade when he was traded to Dallas. How that all came about in just basically a day where we get a report that they were opening the idea of trading him to him being traded, like, happened within hours, and how insane that felt as a Knicks fan. He was a player that we hoped potentially would get to a point where he was an perennial all-star player. But imagine trading a 25-year-old player that is a legitimate MVP candidate, as Mark puts it, just in the finals last year as the best player on the basketball team. Thank you, Iceman Sham. Really appreciate that. Ray Marcano. Ray, good seeing you on the Patreon town hall. Really nice to formally meet you. Makes no sense. Davis is 6 years older. Did Dallas not want to pay Luka this summer? The return for a 25-year-old future Hall of Famer seems awfully light. Well, Ray, you nailed the idea of them not wanting to pay him, because after you had sent this, we did get reporting that seemed to be the issue at play, at least from the perspective of Dallas, by way of Tim McMahon. Mavericks, I'll read it again. Mavs had major concerns about moving forward with Luka Doncic due to his constant conditioning issues and the looming, it's ominous sounding, right? Looming commitment of another Supermax contract extension this summer. So clearly that was at least something we have to pay attention to. But I would agree with you that the return is light. And I understand that this has happened before, where teams have traded star players without making that player widely available. Pau Gasol, ironically, traded to the Lakers and not made available to the wider NBA when Memphis traded him to LA. So I know this has happened before, but in a supply demand situation, it just doesn't make any sense to not drive the price up a little bit. You're not creating any sort of competition because you have got another first round pick from LA. If you got another offer you were willing to consider, I don't understand how Dallas operated here. Maybe we'll get more reporting here in the days to come. And I think we have one more on this one before we wrap. CC Kirby, thank you, CC, again for contributing. Mark Cuban didn't want to pay for Steve Nash, Jalen Brunson, and now Luka Doncic. Not the best track record in that regard. And that is a brilliant, brilliant point. Let Steve Nash go because he didn't believe in him as a superstar, all-star point guard. Didn't want to pay him. Rescinded the original offer to Jalen Brunson because they wanted the flexibility, didn't want to pay him. And now Luka didn't want to pay him. I believe got lucky a few different contractual negotiations with Dirk, especially later years, by Dirk giving them a nice little discount on some contractual situations. So clearly we have a track record of Mark Cuban being a little light in the wallet when it's time to really pay up. And maybe he just maybe he didn't believe in Luka long term, or maybe he didn't feel it was the right place to go on just a basketball sense, or maybe the conditioning thing is a true red flag for them. But if you're a Dallas Mavericks fan, and we can leave it here, I guess, you must be sick to your stomach, because there's just no way to spin this. Despite Nico Harrison's best efforts, there's no way to spin this in a positive direction. The Mavericks may end up fine. They may even end up better for this. But the process of getting to this point and what they had to do on February the 2nd, 2025 has damaged their organization in a significant long-term way. They will recover eventually, but for the next 3 to 5 years, while Luka Doncic is potentially winning MVPs in Los Angeles for the Lakers, they're going to have to wrestle with the fact that they had a player that you were lucky to get. You had teams pass on him in the draft, and you were gifted a generational talent, and you have now traded that player away for, yes, an all-NBA level player, but an off-injured NBA all-NBA player making a ton of money. And it is just a massive, earth-shattering, league-altering move. And we are going to get a lot of reporting and analysis on this in the days and weeks to come. And I'm just going to be very fascinated to finally learn about what went down behind the scenes regarding why this had to happen. Well, we started this post-game show breaking down a basketball game, and the Knicks lost 128 to 112, falling to 32-17 to the Los Angeles Lakers. For a while, then they were beating the Knicks. We're putting the finishing touches on one of the most insane, wildest trades in the history of this league. But thank you for being with me as we extended through and reacted to that insanity. And thank you for tuning in to the KFS Postgame Show presented by BetUS. Please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and leave us a 5-star rating wherever you are listening to this episode. It does wonders to get us known and notoriety and get our brand out there. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for everyone that participated on the super chats. And Mark, thank you so much for sticking with me through the wee hours of the morning and helping me dissect a trade that I don't even think I processed fully yet. Thank you everyone for being here, and we'll catch you soon. Take care.